Hey guys, welcome to Project Build Live YouTube edition Audi A4 3.2 hard start episode 1. What I'm going to be doing in this episode is just kind of introducing you to uh, some issues that I've been experiencing on my wife's 3.2 here behind me. So it exhibits some hard starting issues where on a cold motor only, whether it's 40 degrees out or minus 30, as long as the motor's cold slash not freshly driven, it'll struggle to start in a efficient manner, whereas it'll stumble. Sometimes it doesn't even start, and then other times it's perfectly fine. So it could be a completely cold motor. It'll boot up like nothing's ever happened. So I'm gonna just take you through what I have done to try to isolate what the issue is. It's a wide known kind of problem on the online. I haven't found a solution for it. Guys say some dealers have mentioned it's a certain thing or two that get fixed. It kind of temporarily fixes it, but doesn't. So I've been really kind of stumped on this. I have a Rostec cable, genuine Rostec cable, and it comes up with 0 codes. So it's very frustrating to try to diagnose when there's no feedback at all. And what I've been doing as well is swapping parts from this also 2006 3.2. I've been swapping parts from it. It doesn't have any issues that this one does. This one starts up perfectly fine every time. Even if you drain it of all the fuel, doing compression tests, it'll still boot right up like nothing's ever happened. So I've been taking parts out of this and swapping it into this to try to help isolate some of the issues. So when I first picked up this car, I'd done some basic maintenance. I just did all the filters, primarily the fuel and oil filter and air filter, and I did all the spark plugs as well. And then when I started reading into the hard starting problem a little bit more, I come to realize that it's a fairly widespread problem amongst all the 3.2s, that also in the A6 as well. And that there's no real solution yet found for it. A lot of guys take it to the dealer, they replace a few things, it kind of gets better, and then it goes back to its usual thing. So I started with the relays underneath the ECU. There's 2 of them there, listed as 614s. I tried a replacement Bosch unit from ECS, and they made the problem way worse. So I went to the dealer, picked up some 644s. It's a revised number from the 614. Put those in, and it went back to its usual hard starting problem. From there, I believe I did a compression test, which was the exact same as what the wagon was experiencing as well. So same compression across the board for both motors. I swapped the coils over from the wagon to no change. I then realized the thermostat was leaking, so I was going to take the whole intake manifold off to get to the thermostat, replace that with the OEM unit. I also did the temperature sensor here at the front with an OEM one. While I was in there, I was starting to notice some fuel mixing in with the oil, and so I swapped the high pressure fuel pump for a brand new unit from the dealer. And while I was doing all that, I also took the intake manifold from the wagon and swapped that into here, and that along came the throttle body, all the sensors in the front there, the map and the evap solenoid as well. So that all came in from the wagon. And in the meantime, I'm taking this motor's intake manifold, whatever it is, and sticking it in the wagon and trying it in the wagon. It completely runs perfectly fine, or starts fine. After that, I think what I had done was I then swapped the ECU with the instrument cluster and the key between the two. Again, still had the same problem here, not in the wagon, and so that ruled out the ECU, which was kind of funny because like when I do some of these swaps of items, it would kind of get better, and then it goes back to getting shitty again. Again, I should mention that there's no codes ever stored anywhere or anything for either motor, which sucks because that really sometimes helps troubleshoot at least a problem. But instead, I'm just swapping all these things blindly. So what I'm doing today, and what we'll get into a time lapse, is I've so far got 4 injectors from the wagon. I pulled all 6 of them out. 2 of them were bad, so I've got 4 injectors from the wagon with 2 brand new ones. I thought maybe a leaking injector would be the cause, but the wagon had 2 leaking injectors the entire time, and so that kind of rules that out as even being a probable cause. But regardless, this has got good injectors going into it now. What else was I doing here? I took the PVC from the wagon. I'm going to pop that in here. I took the crank position sensor as well from the wagon, which tucked in all the way down in here. Swap that over between the two. These cam face sensors, there's one for each cam, so 2 intakes here. The exhausts are on the sides. I swapped those over from the wagon as well previously, and that had no change. But while I'm in here, I'm doing the intake VVT solenoids. This one here was all mangled and came apart in like 3 pieces, so I'm kind of thinking that might have had an issue. Maybe the cam wasn't phasing properly upon immediate startup due to maybe loss of oil pressure in that. Anyway, so I've got new ones for those. I'm not going to do the exhaust ones yet. I'll come back and do those when I do the valve cover gaskets. But I think that sums up what I've done to date. And the valves are fairly clean. They're actually cleaner on this motor than they are on the wagon. I cleaned up all the these little slides. Anyways, I cleaned the slides out. And the lower intake plenum runners, these I end up getting all nice and clean. Removed all the carbon off them. So we'll be putting this all back together today over a time lapse and some music. I also noticed this connector was never really bolted down to anything, so someone who's back here, obviously it's supposed to be connected to the underside of the oil filter housing, so somebody's been back there doing some messing around. And while I was messing around, I also noticed this wire here. It looks like a grounding wire of sorts that has a splice in it. It's kind of odd looking, but anyway, so I'm gonna check it out and yeah, see that it's grounding properly. That wire out or disconnected from underneath the oil filter, and yeah, this is definitely not an OEM connection. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and put a butt connector on this just to make sure it's a little bit more secure than just loose wires taped together. But what I found weird, because I went to go check the wagon and see what was kind of going on back there, and it has kind of the same thing going on. Right here, it's got the same wire, the same grounding wire, but it's grounded all the way back up to, I guess, just a normal, more common area. But yeah, for some reason, it too also has the same grounding wire spliced into. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and clean the one up, at least in the sedan, and probably mimic this install here and bring it back up higher to the firewall. So here's my repair. Just pretty simple spade on the end with a butt connector. And then again, just melt this shrink wrap onto it, and I'm going to tie it into this ground here on the firewall. So I'm gonna wrap that up. Buttoned up the 3.2. I'm gonna take it on for its first startup. I don't think it's gonna diagnose or anything's gonna be able to be determined from this startup. It's gonna take probably a full week for it to for me to come to some sort of conclusion as to whether or not anything that I've done has actually resolved the issue. So anyways, we'll listen to the startup and see how it sounds. that startup was pretty much what I expected for having the fuel rails completely drained. Two dash lights came on. One was the traction control for some reason. I don't know why. I cleared it, never came back. And then the other one was obviously the check engine light. And when I cleared it, two codes kept coming back, which was cam position sensor P0346, and then the intake changeover valve position sensor, which is down here. That kept coming on. I couldn't clear them. The cam position sensor was one of these, either the position sensor here or the VVT solenoid under here. So because I swapped the VVT solenoids for some new ones, I figured I'd put the old ones back in. I put one old one that was original to this motor back in here, and then one for the wagon back here, and they kept coming back. I ended up reviewing some of my wiring, and as I was reviewing the wiring, I noticed that the intake manifold changeover valve sensor and the cam position sensor wires were actually reversed. I had them plugged in backwards. The wiring length is surprisingly similar. The connectors are identical, and anyways, I noticed that this little wire retainer is supposed to be plugged into the head, but it's broken. Anyways, that I realized was over here, and put two and two together. Before I did all that, the car was still, it was starting worse than what it was. I ran it for a day like that, and then started looking at it and noticed that. So ever since I swapped that over, 0 codes, starts up every time. It's been 4 successful starts. I'm not going to consider it resolved yet until I go through at least a full week worth of cold starts. And one thing to note actually is the wire back here. I tried disconnecting it entirely just to see what codes came up. Usually it'll pull up a insufficient supply or something, but nothing ever came up. Nothing in the engine, transmission, anywhere else on the car. So I really have no idea what that ground is for. And I even disconnected it and it starts perfectly fine without it. So that wire is kind of a mystery to me still. I have to get some wiring diagrams to try to determine what it is. But anyways, I think this concludes episode 1. Episode 2 is going to be taking the components I took from this, so the cam position sensor, the lower intake runners, whatever else I grabbed from it. I'm going to stick them into the wagon, see if I could try to maybe find out, and also the intake or the injectors, and hopefully see if maybe it will exhibit some hard steering problems. Otherwise, I don't know what exactly was the solution to this. But right now, that's it for episode 1, and stay tuned for episode 2. Just as an FYI, the next episode is going to feature a lot of wagon content.